What's up, everyone? After months of speculation, Jason and Travis Kelce have officially signed an exclusive podcast distribution deal with Wondery. The 3-year, $100 million partnership gives Amazon's podcast network exclusive audio and video rights to all new and old content on their podcast, New Heights. Now, the New Heights podcast will still be available on all of the same platforms that it is today. We're talking Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and others. But Wondery will now be in charge of basically everything else besides production. This includes smaller things like the right of first refusal for new shows that Travis and Jason Kelce want to create. However, it also includes bigger things like exclusive rights to advertising sales, the ability to develop international audio versions of the podcast, aka in different languages and countries around the world, the right to host live streams of the podcast and other events, and the right to develop, manufacture, license, and distribute all merchandise for the show, including new consumer products. The Kelce brothers said in a statement this week, "We couldn't be more excited to team with Wondery for the next phase of New Heights. We love this show and the fan base that has grown with us over the last 2 seasons. Wondery understands the shared vision and will offer a wealth of experience and resources to take us to new heights. We are going to create some groundbreaking moments together through this partnership. We are thrilled to start season 3. See you soon, 92%ers. Now, there are several components to this deal, but here's what I find most interesting. First off, this is a massive win for the athlete content space overall, and Jason and Travis Kelce specifically. The New Heights podcast is only 2 years old, meaning they have recorded less than 100 episodes in total. Yet the Kelce brothers will now sign a deal worth more money over 3 years than either of them has made throughout their entire NFL career. That's because Jason Kelce has career earnings of just under $82 million, while Travis Kelce has career earnings of just under $77 million. It's also worth mentioning that this is a licensing deal. That's important to mention because Wondery will have to give the show's content library and intellectual property, or IP, back to the Kelce brothers after just 3 years, potentially enabling them to go out and sign another 9-figure podcast licensing deal, either with Wondery or potentially someone else altogether. Secondly, this $100 million deal further accelerates Wave Sports and Entertainment's, or WSE's, model. For those of you who aren't as familiar, WSE produces the New Heights podcast. The Santa Monica-based company has changed its business model a few times over the last few years, but WSE currently produces some of the biggest athlete-hosted podcasts in sports. That includes shows like New Heights, 7 p.m. in Brooklyn with Mello and Miro, Podcast P with Paul George, and The Right Time with Bomani Jones. WSE provided support so Jason and Travis Kelce didn't have to worry about a thing, setting up studios so they could record episodes on off days from the comfort of their own homes. That made sure that the Kelce brothers didn't have to worry about setting up cameras, editing the content, or creating titles and thumbnails. However, the real secret sauce is that WSE spent years building and acquiring social media channels. They own accounts on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok with millions of sports followers. We're talking about accounts like Buckets and Jukes, allowing the company to promote the New Heights podcast to millions of category-interested fans on day one. Now, of course, the Taylor Swift bump helped, but it's important to remember that New Heights was already one of the top sports podcasts with hundreds of thousands of downloads per episode before Taylor Swift's name was ever mentioned on the show. If you look at their social media following, it's absolutely incredible what they've accomplished so far. Again, in just 2 years, they have 2.4 million subscribers on YouTube, 2.7 million followers on Instagram, 4.3 million followers on TikTok, 452,000 followers on Twitter, and 1.4 million followers on Facebook. WSC's social media accounts helped New Heights quickly acquire 1.5 million followers in the show's first 5 months, and the podcast has 11.2 million followers and subscribers today, which is especially crazy considering they have less than 100 episodes of total content to work with. The New Heights PR team sends media members pre-edited short-form clips after each episode. These clips are then redistributed on social media, creating a flywheel of content across various platforms, often resulting in millions of additional views. Thirdly, I already see people saying this is a bad deal for Wondery, but I don't think that's true, and maybe it's helpful to understand the company's overall strategy. Wondery is a podcast studio and network that produces and distributes both in-studio and partner shows. They monetize the content through an in-house ad sales team, and they have a subscription component too, offering listeners both early access but also ad-free listening on Wondery shows for a $5.99 monthly subscription fee, or around $45 annually. The company has 220 active shows, collectively recording 72 million streams. More than 50 Wondery podcasts have reached number 1 on Apple Podcasts, and the streaming company was purchased by Amazon for $300 million just 4 years after its founding. Wondery will make back a good chunk of the $33.3 million annual fee in advertising sales alone. That's because New Heights was selling 7-figure ad packages last year. The podcast can charge up to 100% higher CPMs than the industry standard because of the overloaded demand, and inventory was booked months in advance. It's also fair to assume that a small portion of the New Heights fan base will pay the $5.99 monthly subscription fee to access new podcast episodes before anyone else. But the bigger play is the monetization of current IP and the creation of new IP. Wondery has already turned several of its podcasts into TV shows. The Kelce brothers will almost certainly be asked to do several live events each year, which Wondery can monetize better than anyone else because of its streaming distribution through Amazon Prime Video. And that's without even mentioning other monetization options, including things like the creation of a toy line or multiplying ad sales by using software to translate the podcast into other popular languages like Spanish, French, Arabic, and Portuguese. This isn't necessarily a new concept at all, don't get me wrong. Amazon's Wondery recently signed a similar deal with Dak Shepard worth $80 million for his podcast, Armchair Expert, and several other big podcasters like Joe Rogan, Alex Cooper, and Smartless with Jason Bateman, Sean Hayes, and Will Arnett have been paid similarly. However, my biggest takeaway from this deal is how digital media continues to change the sports media landscape. Jason and Travis Kelce leveraged the NFL's brand to build a massive fan base. They then transported that fan base to a product they own, and that product is now going to earn them $100 million over the next 3 years. Many people said these deals would stop happening because they weren't profitable, but that's clearly not true. Wondery wanted to expand its content into sports, and there was no better podcast for them to license than New Heights. Jason and Travis Kelce aren't the first athletes to sign large licensing contracts. Pat McAfee's 5-year, $85 million deal with ESPN is a great example, but I'm betting that they won't be the last either. Thank you so much for watching this content. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to the channel as I make weekly videos breaking down the business and money behind sports.